Have you ever considered that the most valuable treasures in life might be hiding in plain sight? The parables we're exploring today challenge everything we think we know about worth and value.
That's such an intriguing way to look at these teachings. The way they use everyday objects, seeds, yeast, fishing nets, to reveal profound truths really captures my attention.
Well, you know what's fascinating about the mustard seed parable specifically? It's actually historically inaccurate in a deliberate way. Mustard plants don't grow into large trees. Yet Jesus describes it that way, to make a point about unexpected growth and transformation.
Hmm, that's really interesting. So you're saying the seeming error is actually part of the message?
Exactly right. And speaking of unexpected messages, let's look at how these parables build on each other. You've got this progression from small beginnings to massive impact, but then, and here's where it gets really interesting, you have these two completely different paths to discovery.
Oh, you mean the hidden treasure versus the pearl merchant? That contrast has always struck me as particularly meaningful.
Right! And here's what many people miss. In both cases, the discoverers actually have to keep their discovery secret while they arrange to acquire it. It's this fascinating detail that adds another layer of complexity to the message.
That's exactly what makes these stories so compelling. They work on multiple levels, like how the fishing net parable reflects actual fishing practices of the time while making this profound statement about judgment.
You know, historical records show that Galilean fishermen would often spend entire nights sorting through their catch, which adds this whole other dimension to the parable. It's not just about separation, it's about the careful, methodical nature of the process.
Well, that certainly puts things in a different perspective. How do you think these messages would have landed with Jesus' original audience?
So here's what's really interesting about that. We have evidence that under Roman rule, even talking about alternative kingdoms was considered potentially seditious. These parables weren't just spiritual teachings, they were politically charged messages, delivered in a way that avoided direct confrontation.
The way you describe that makes me think about how these teachings might apply to modern social movements and change.
Absolutely right. And you know what's particularly relevant? Studies show that successful social movements often start with just 3.5% of the population actively participating. It's like that mustard seed principle in action.
That's such a powerful statistic. It really brings home the idea that small beginnings can lead to massive change.
And speaking of change, let's talk about what happened in Nazareth. Here's the fascinating thing. Historical records suggest it was a town of only about 400 people. So when Jesus returns and faces rejection, we're talking about a very intimate, personal kind of skepticism.
The way you put that really brings home how painful that rejection must have been. It's like the ultimate example of familiarity breeding contempt.
You know what's really striking about these parables when you look at them together? They're essentially describing different aspects of the same transformation process, from discovery to cost to implementation to eventual outcome.
That's a really compelling way to tie it all together. It's like each parable is illuminating a different facet of the same truth.
And here's what I find most challenging about these teachings. They're asking us to completely reorient our value system. When you really dig into it, they're suggesting that our conventional metrics of success and worth might be entirely backward.
Well, that certainly resonates with current discussions about measuring what matters versus what's easily quantifiable.
Exactly. And you know what makes these parables so enduring? They manage to be both timeless and timely. They spoke to first century agricultural communities just as effectively as they speak to our digital age about influence, value, and transformation.
That's such an important observation about their universal application. These stories continue to challenge our assumptions about what's truly valuable.
And perhaps that's the most profound lesson here, that real transformation, whether personal or societal, often starts small, looks different than we expect, and requires total commitment once we recognize its worth.